mental fitness, performance, being able to bring your best on demand. These are not easy things to do.
People understand now how to cross-train for physical fitness. Why don't I just start to teach people how to cross-train for mental fitness?
It's actually a moral obligation on the part of us adults to enable holistic well-being or well-being practices and awareness.
Our mental fitness is not a luxury.
What everybody just thinks of gut is all food. Food will fix the gut, but that is just not it.
I started to really study this new science coming out about the gut, the brain, and the axis, the connection between the gut and the brain. This gut-brain connection is really the root, the step one for all of our practices.
Hi, from Round Glass, this is Living with Sunny. I'm your host, Sunny Singh. Today on our show, we have a Round Glass teacher, Cara Bradley. Cara is a performance coach. She is a meditation teacher. And she works with high performers, athletes, educators, executives, to how to have them perform at their peak and get to their peak on demand. She's also the author of the book, On the Verge, Wake Up, Show Up, and Shine. Welcome, Cara. Delighted to have you.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
There's so much we can talk about, mental fitness, performance, being able to bring your best on demand. These are not easy things to do, are they?
No, definitely not for even the highest performers. It's not like a high performer can just turn an on and off switch. So it's something that we really have to train ourselves to do, which is to be more stable, more centered, more calm, even in the midst of chaos or competition.
And even the best athletes or the elite athletes, whether they are executives or athletes or the elite performers, even they have to get themselves in that state of being before a soccer game, before a football game, or when they have to present to a large audience. They have to. This is a practice they also have to do. So even if regular folks like us have to practice and struggle and fail, it is okay because it is not easy. It requires practice for even the best, but it's doable.
And it's interesting. I had one of my best experience, or really an informative and pivotal experience when I was a young adult on the track. I ran track in college, and I had one of these flow experiences where I performed my best. I felt like a gazelle, which I never did. And it was so different than how I normally competed, which was full of jitters. But yet there was something very familiar about how I felt. And it reminded me of how I felt as a child. And so that really led me into the study of how do we access that optimal state, or what some call the natural state of our intelligence, of our presence. How do I actually train to do that? And it was a while ago, and so I went to the library and I found books on yoga and meditation, and they seemed to be a good path for me to start with because they were disciplines that I could train, and I was used to doing that as an athlete. And of course, that opened up many doors to lots more training and experience, not only for performance, but just for life.
One of the things I say is that when somebody speaks from a place of authority, they should have substance to back them up. So you have lived that life. You were a sports person, a elite sports person. You had some struggles. You became a seeker, a student. You learned, you became good at it, and now you're speaking from authority, which is what I like about your story and what you do, because you have gone through the hard knocks of life to saying, let me now talk about it because I went through the experience, I learned, and here's what I know, and I love that.
The struggles have continued for sure. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 24 and owned a busy yoga studio for 16 years. And it's interesting because I developed adrenal fatigue, which is burnout for the most part, as a yoga studio owner. So, and it's interesting because I felt like I had to hide it because it's not good for business for the business owner to be stressed out and burned out and not sleeping and all, everything that comes with burnout. But again, it was really fruitful ground for my own discoveries and to really dive deeper into my practices. And not just yoga and meditation, but all around sleep and nutrition and movement and recovery and relationships. So it's been a journey for sure. And I started using this phrase mental fitness about 5 or 6 years ago because I've been in the fitness world for a long time, and I've seen how people have learned and started to adopt the idea of cross training for physical fitness. We know now we can't just walk every day. I mean, we need to pick up some weights, do some stretching, do some different things that are going to move muscles and move our bodies on different planes. So we know that now. And what I noticed as a meditation teacher is that I would often get that kind of glossed over look, and people kind of like, they look at you and they nod and they know, yes, I know I should meditate. I know I should do breath training. I know, but they're not doing it. And so I started to think about, well, people understand now how to cross train for physical fitness. Why don't I just start to teach people how to cross train for mental fitness? So, mental fitness, in my definition, really, and this is just mine, is the capacity for our body and mind to be synchronized, to actually work together. When we feel good, our body and our mind are kind of humming in rhythm of our lives. And so that sense of being mentally fit is, in my definition, a sense of feeling strong, calm, and clear. And it's really a state of coherence. Some call it autonomic coherence or flow.
The holistic approach to the gut issue, that is just not food, it is stress and environmental toxins, etc. And taking a holistic approach to addressing it, taking care of it, I think is not what everybody talks about. Everybody just thinks of gut is all food. Food will fix the gut, but that is just not it.
A few years ago, I started to really study this new science coming out about the gut, the brain, and the access, the connection between the gut and the brain. And so I won't get too down into the kind of science geekiness that I can go because I love this stuff. But what we've learned is that our gut ecology is producing most of our neurotransmitters, those feel good neurotransmitters or neurochemicals for mental clarity, acuity, for our ability to focus, for joy, for connection. And if the gut is imbalanced, then obviously there's not going to be a good production of this. And if the access, which is our immune system and our nervous system, is out of whack, then the signaling between the gut and the brain becomes more, and I think we can all get this, more like a 3G phone as opposed to a 5G phone. And that's just brain fog. So I like to talk about four ways that our gut or our gut ecology gets thrown off. And it's super simple. The first one is food, right? So if we're eating garbage in, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If we're eating a lot of processed food, sugars and processed foods, the bacteria that like those foods, those little bugs that like the foods, are going to flourish, and it's going to crush out or crowd out the good bacteria that's producing the good stuff. And so food is number one. Food, and then stress. When we're stressed, it throws off everything, including our gut microbiome. There's a lot of people when they get stressed, they can't eat or they overeat or their digestion is off. And that's why, because there's such a correlation. So food, stress, pharmaceuticals that will throw off the balance of our gut ecology. Sometimes we have to take the medicine. So we just have to understand that we need to notice the other variables and be mindful there. And then the fourth is environmental toxins. So the reason why I am so excited about this is I believe that this gut brain connection is really the root, the step one for all of our practices, when we can get the gut and the brain and the access working optimally, then the nervous system regulates more easily. Then inflammation goes down and there's less brain fog. Now people feel better. They start sleeping better. They start looking for that meditation practice. They start remembering to do their breath practice. They start moving their bodies more and connecting more with source. So for me, it's been like a huge gateway and a new inspiration for teaching people. When we really understand the impact we can have on our kids' mental health and mental wellness through food choice and through stress, obviously, when we recognize that direct impact, I believe that we can really help a lot of kids and parents of kids that are struggling right now.
And that's why I believe, Cara, is that it is imperative. It's actually a moral obligation on the part of us adults to enable holistic well being or well being practices and awareness in our schools and to our parents. Because they don't have much sources to go to. And in school, they're just busy opening up books and figuring out what the book says. They learn biology, but they don't understand their body. They talk about, brains and intellectual horsepower, but they don't understand their mind. There's no connection between the mind, body, and spirit. They're never taught that. And that itself helps as a foundation, I believe, from everything I've been hearing and my own experience, that becomes the foundation to address anything in life.
One of my phrases that I use often is that our mental fitness is not a luxury. And I believe that we have to step away from this idea that self-care is about bubble baths and face masks and, oh, I'm going to have some me time. Me time is the most important time because we have an obligation to future generations to do something about how we are all living and feeling in the world right now, and it's not good. So, this is one of the things I share on my podcast. I talk about it every day, is that mental fitness is not a luxury and we need you. We need all hands on deck. So if you're taking care of you and doing what you need to do to prioritize your holistic well-being, just like we teach on Round Glass, then you are going to be a part of the solution. You're going to share your more positive energy, more hopeful, compassionate heart. You're going to be a part of the solution. So I really hope that we can get beyond this idea that it's just about me time and bubble baths.
Now, it's another important thing, and I'll club a few things under this is nothing is as you always plan, not everything is smooth, such as life. Then we encounter challenges of all kinds. That's a turbulence. And there's always rockiness in whatever we do, whether we're meditation, yoga, we're centering ourselves. If you look at this set of emotions, the judgment, the challenges, the rockiness, you know, it is first, what I want to ask is first, it's okay to have those emotions. It's okay to, I like, would I say, hey, why are you judging somebody else? Well, okay, my mind said I'm judging, but it happened. So let's accept that I judge. Let's accept there's a challenge. Let's accept there's rockiness. But then how do we deal with it, right? Instead of saying, don't do this, okay, it happened, but how do I prepare myself to get over it, get beyond it, so that becomes inconsequential? I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
So I love this idea of, or this definition of meditation in Tibet, in Tibetan, is the word gom, Gom. And gom means, translated, it means to become familiar with. And when I learned that as a student, it really changed everything for me because it made me realize that meditation was it's a practice where I'm able to become familiar with the all of me, all of my patterns, all of my conditioning, all the things I've adopted from my family, from my culture, from my life's experiences. And so when we recognize that we have these patterns, it helps us to pull back the lens a little bit, right? So, for instance, I'll give you a personal example. My my conditioning from my mother was to feel disappointed. I remember because she would feel disappointed in things. She lost her father early, and like this is the way her life unfolded. And I realized when I started to meditate that I would be disappointed. And my husband would say, "You're always disappointed in me." And so that was something that I had to become familiar with. It's not like it stopped overnight, and every once in a while it slips back in. But as we become more aware and we practice more, we notice all of these thought patterns, these emotional patterns, as you said, these physical patterns, the patterns that we have in our relationships. And what my teacher Scott taught us a beautiful loving kindness practice that I love to use on myself when I catch myself doing something like a disappointment pattern or a judgment pattern or frustration pattern is just to put my hand on my heart, and you don't have to do it this physically, and just to say, there, sweetheart. There, sweetheart. There you go. It's okay. You caught yourself. There. We're just a jumble of patterns. And becoming aware of our patterns is the first step in helping us to start to redirect, to dissolve what's not helpful, to strengthen more helpful, compassionate, mindful patterns in our lives. So, there, sweetheart is one of my favorite things to say, and it kind of just interrupts it all and it helps me to move on.
So, where you are talking to, some people say inner voice, but I'll say you're talking to your inner self. That emotion that takes you away, saying, okay, talk to yourself and saying, it's okay. And it happened, you slipped, something happened. But that's in the past. You've caught it, you've recognized it, let's move on. So that very acceptance and awareness, and when you do it over and over again, what you're saying is becomes the nudges that you give yourself to eventually come and saying, it doesn't even factor in anymore because that emotion is inconsequential to me. So it's almost like a forgotten emotion and you get past and over it.
This is what we do in life. We're constantly moving in and out, constantly, but we're just not aware of it. And as we practice more and we slow things down and we observe ourselves, we become more aware of what's been happening all along. And that puts us in the driver's seat. Now we can actually steer ourselves a little bit more. If you don't want to be that impatient person online at the store or the rude person driving in the traffic jam, you can train just by starting to become aware and recognizing it and giving yourself that little pat and moving on.
I think it's exceptionally powerful, Cara, that because I was role playing it in my mind when you were talking and say, okay, something happens and I say, okay, listen, it's okay, it happened. Now let's deal with it. Let's figure it out. Let's go with that bump. It's like a road bump. It's a small challenge. It's an obstacle. And the fact that you abstract out what happened with your centered self means you can look at it objectively. You can deal with it objectively, and you can because most things in life are not threatening, don't kill you, right? You just have to figure out a way to deal with it, saying, yeah, it is okay. It's like stuff happens, such as life, right? We can't expect that life will be perfect. If it was perfect, it'll be boring. So I think it's a very powerful technique. You use certain words, people can figure out their own phrases of how to, in a way, talk to their inner self or to that side and saying, I got you.
And it's not to say, listen, if you did something that hurt someone else, then you can just own it and say, listen, I'm really working on this myself. I'm really becoming aware. I'm so sorry. This kind of just slipped but I'm catching myself. And guess what happens? I mean, that makes them more open-hearted and compassionate toward you as well. I think these practices, it's really, we have to start with ourselves. If we want a more loving world, we have to start by loving ourselves. We have to by noticing and recognizing we're human, that we all have patterns and conditions. Some of them are so we're just not aware of. It then allows us to be more open and available and compassionate to others.
And in a way, being vulnerable, being authentic is a great solution.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Cara, what a wonderful conversation. Loved it. I would like to thank you for being on the show. It's been a fabulous conversation. I look forward to our next conversation.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all that you do and offer the world as well.
Thank you, Cara. For more information on Cara, please go to roundglass.com. We want to hear from you. It is your journey of holistic well-being. We love your feedback. If you have any questions for us, do write to us at livingwithsunny@roundglass.com. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, and thank you for your support. See you next time.